So a bit of background information about email marketing, if you like, and it's asking that really big question, is email marketing actually still relevant in 2022? Now, if it wasn't, I probably wouldn't be doing this webinar, to be honest. I've seen email marketing really make a resurgence in the last 2 years. I don't know whether it's a pandemic thing. I don't know whether it's an economic change thing, but perhaps it may be that email marketing has become more popular simply because advertising and marketing on social media has kind of plateaued. It's kind of reached the point where we don't know what else we can do with it to get more reach. So we're returning to some of the old things we've done before. But there are certain attributes to email marketing, such as it's taken more seriously by people than, say, a post on a social media platform. And by taken more seriously, I mean it's regarded as having a higher status. If someone's sending me an email, it's to a very personal place. If someone's sending me an email, it's also a very private place of mine. So if I'm letting someone into my mailbox, it means I take them seriously. We also find that email newsletters in general have better view rates than social media. What I mean by a view rate is like an open rate. So it's the same thing. Go in social media, you ignore a lot of things. They sort of pass you by. Your inbox is very much the same. You'll see your inbox, you'll see things in it. And what we find is that for a post on a feed, say for instance, if you are posting something on Facebook about your business from your business page, you can expect an engagement rate of 0.1%. Yes, 0.1%, not 1%. It's really, really low. But when we look at open rates for email newsletters, it runs at around about 8 to about 18% on average. That's a lot bigger than 0.1%. So we're seeing that email newsletters are outperforming social media by quite a long shot at the moment. So for those reasons, we find that 87% of marketers and organizations that have marketing teams still rate email marketing as being so worth it. We thought that once it hit below the 20% mark in open rates, that that's a bad thing. But in realistic terms, that's one of the best open rates you can imagine for any kind of marketing. It's better than television. It's better than radio. We don't notice a lot of radio ads. We have learned to tune out TV ads and often, turn down the volume or turn away to another device when TV ads come on. So we're finding that the hit rate of email marketing is way better than what we thought it was, even though it may only be between 8 and 18%. That's a lot more than 0.1%, isn't it? Way, way more. So what data can we get from our emails? Can we get from email marketing? What can we learn from it? Well, depending on the program that you're using, you can usually get information such as open rates. So that's the percentage of what was sent was actually open. So I've currently got an email newsletter at the moment that's averaging around about 48% open rate, which to me is phenomenal considering there's about 7,500 people on that list at the moment. I'm very, very fortunate. I am expecting it to drop over time because I started it off with 7,500 people based on a list I've been building for 10 years and had done nothing with. I've now started to do it. The unsubscribes have been very low and the open rates very high. So we'll see how that goes. You can also see who opened it, who didn't open it. More importantly, you can see who may have unsubscribed or who may have replied or done something with it, clicked through a link. And that comes to our click rates as well. We can see where people have clicked and what they have clicked on and how many of them have clicked. You also see the kind of devices that people are opening on. I'm continually surprised to see that most of my open rate is on a computer, not on a phone. But in the last 2 weeks, the amount of people on a phone has crept up quite dramatically. So I'm starting to think maybe I need to make sure that my email is much more mobile phone reading friendly. And the last one there is not meant to be click rates, but it's meant to be clicks. So you can actually see what the clicks are. So who clicked on what. And if you've got 3 links, as I had 4 in my most recent newsletter, there's one particular link which is in the body of the email, not at the end of it where I usually put my links. It is by far the most clicked. It's showing that I've given an example of, for instance, a newsletter that I actually have copied my newsletter's format from, and that has gained like 3 times more the amount of clicks than anything that's down the bottom, which is saying this is inviting you to watch a video or to book time with me or to join one of my upcoming webinars. So it just goes to show you that knowing where those clicks are has now taught me that I may be better off putting some of my clickable items earlier in the email rather than right at the end to get more people to click on them. Although I don't really want to mess too much with what seems to be working pretty well. How much though does email marketing cost? And this will vary depending upon the systems you're using. It can be free to send. You can use free accounts with MailChimp, MailerLite. HubSpot has a free account, which is what I use. I don't use a free account, I use a paid one. But there's lots of things: Constant Contact, Active Campaign, all these different email sending platforms. And a lot of them have little to no ongoing costs. A lot of them have free entry-level versions, but the really good ones don't tend to. In fact, I usually steer people away from MailChimp simply because it has some of the lowest open rates of all emails in the industry. And it also seems to get stuck in a lot more spam filters than other items. MailerLite, I think, performs better. HubSpot, I think, performs way better than those. But then you look at things like Active Campaign, Constant Contact. They are very, very specialized and quite powerful email marketing platforms that seem to cut through where some of these other platforms don't. They seem to be able to get into mailboxes that others don't get through. And the cost per click for us is way lower than social media ads. The cost per click could be anything from $6 to $8 for me to get someone to click on something from an ad that I'm running on Facebook and Instagram. The cost per click on here is basically the cost of whatever it costs me to run my mail platform. It costs me about $80 a month to run my whole customer relationship management platform. That's HubSpot, and I run it all from there. It costs me way more than $80 a month to run a social media campaign. So everything, once I pay that $80 a month, is then free for me to use. Once I'm in social media, I can run an $80 campaign for a couple of weeks, but I still got to pay for that to go longer and longer and longer. So the cost per click, definitely way higher on social media ads than what it is on email marketing, which is why I've sort of taken a lot more of an interest in it in the last probably 2 months. So what's the potential reach of email? Well, apart from the fact that 4 billion people in the world have access to email, where only around about 3 billion have access to social media, definitely a lot of people have access to email. But what we find is that when you break it down between people who have opted into your website, people who have been actively marketed to opt into your website, perhaps to your list through a website, and then what I call is automatic opt-in, you've got a much greater lot of people if you automatically opt people in. Now, there's certain rules and legislation that goes with this. The Spam Act of 2003 requires that people opt into marketing emails, that you don't opt them in. Although if you have a previous relationship with them, you're able to do that. So how I automatically opt people in is anyone who's ever emailed me or who I've ever emailed, they have a pre-existing relationship with me. I can add those to my marketing. They will then receive my marketing. They can choose to opt out if they like. Now, does this annoy anybody? Well, out of 7,500 people who I've hit up in the last, 8 weeks with my email marketing, I've had less than 25 unsubscribes. That tells you it's not that annoying to people. And if it's written right, and if you do the right thing, you're actually not going to annoy people at all. They might ignore you, they may unspam you, but I actually make an allowance for that in my text, where I actually say at the very end of it, I say, look, if you're not getting any value out of this, I really invite you to unsubscribe. And look, I'm not going to worry about it. I don't mind, and we're still friends, okay? So I actually make it really, really clear at the end of the email that, look, honestly, unsubscribing from my email is not going to, cause me any lost sleep. I've got 7,500 other people on that mail list. I'm fine, thank you. So those 3 ways, opting in via a website, it's through a form on a website where you deliberately type in your email address and say, yes, I want to get that. The actively marketed is where you've got, say, for instance, an email signature on your regular email, or you've got a social media post asking people to subscribe to your list, usually through a direct link through to whatever the system is you're using to run your email newsletter. That automatic opt-in is what I told you. It's basically I opt in every single person who comes through me. I've connected HubSpot through to my Gmail so that everyone who comes in through my Gmail is automatically opted in for that list. They can opt straight out if they want to. That's up to them. But for now, everybody who comes through gets opted in. And I'm pretty happy with the results of that. Another area that's really interesting for email, and you don't often think of email being creative, but it actually is a much more creative space than social media, particularly when you consider that a Facebook post is a pretty defined area of what you can do. There's a bit of room for a bit of text at the top before it drops down to a read more. There's room for one video or image you can put in there, and that's really about it. The only creativity you've got is with that image. It could be a graphic or something, it could be anything you like. But the creativity of an email newsletter is almost endless. You've got on the right there, you've got different shapes, different sizes. They essentially look exactly like a website, right? That's because email clients like Microsoft Outlook, Gmail, Hotmail, any of those kind of free web-based mails, any email client at all has the ability to read HTML, which is the language that underpins the World Wide Web. So you can create something essentially that looks like a website that is delivered through email. And it can be attractive and nice and beautiful and brand friendly, all those things without actually having to be super, super boring and very, very dull and corporate. So you can have a lot of fun with your designs of email marketing without having to be pushed into the format that it's forced through social media like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and whatever, where you are constrained to the space you've got. You can't scroll past that. It is what it is. So why do we think that email marketing is so bad then? Why has it got such a bad name? Why have people been dropping off it in droves over the last couple of years? Well, I'm glad they are, because it leaves more room for those of us who are actually investing in it at the moment. Basically, what happens with email newsletters that we tend to make those newsletters all about us. We don't make it about the customer we're talking about. We don't make it about the people that we're delivering it to. We certainly don't take a look in their lives and see what they need. We just go, I have a message and I want to share that message with the world. That message could be a special, that message could be a product, a service. It could be what you need to know about something that's happened with our company, like we won a contract, or we finished this website, or we are doing this and this is whose birthday it is. We make all this content all about ourselves. So if someone opens that up, has a first glance at the first time they've ever seen that email newsletter, and they see, well, who cares? I don't care that it's your accountant's birthday. Then they're going to drop off that newsletter. And that all these all these email systems like Gmail and Outlook and all that, they've got this ability to be able to measure what you're doing within that email. If they find that there is zero engagement with you with that email, they stop showing that email and may even send it through the spam filter. So it's important from day one that you engage people immediately in that newsletter to make sure that it is about them and it's something which has an interest to them, not just a boastful thing of yours, not just you delivering news from your corporate head office and as some kind of press release, but something which actually refers to them. That's why it's marketing, not just sending an email. Another thing we do really bad is that we don't know why we're doing an email in the first place. In a previous employer that I worked for, we had a particular email that we would send out every 2 weeks. We didn't really know why we were sending it. There was no strategy behind it. We were just, no, we're sending out an email every 2 weeks because that's what businesses do. So we put together this very boring, very boasty email and then wondered why no one cared. It had open rates of less than 7% and it never really got any replies. No one cared about it. No one was reading it. All the things we'd include in it, the links we'd include in it just wouldn't get clicked on. It's like we were talking about ourselves, and we were. We were essentially doing that, talking about ourselves, and we had no point to that email. We didn't have a point to that email that said, we want to use this to drive more connections with more clients. We didn't use it with an idea of we're going in saying, we want to generate more registrations for our workshops and webinars. No, none of that. We just said, well, we're doing a newsletter because that's what businesses do. So if you don't know why you're doing it, then you're not going to understand what to do. And if you don't know what to do, you're not going to reach people with a message they want. We also don't tend to optimize for mobile phones. And I've been a little bit bad with this myself lately too, because I prepare everything on a desktop within a desktop system. I don't really make an allowance for what it's going to look like on a mobile phone. Now, thankfully, my particular variety of email newsletter is very text heavy. So it's not going to necessarily be heavy on images and logos and graphics. So I don't have a big problem with loading big files onto a small device like a mobile phone. But I also don't necessarily make it so that it's friendly for mobiles by breaking that text up with some images, because as you're scrolling down a page with a lot of text, you're talking about 3.5 to 4 minutes worth of text reading, that gets really repetitive and really boring after a while. So optimizing for mobiles can be adding breaks in there with images and videos, adding separators, like little separators that actually separate one bit of text from another to give people a visual break. or it could just simply be not putting very large embedded videos and photos in there and making it more a text-based email. We also tend to use wrong sending services. And this is where I come up with the whole MailChimp problem again. MailChimp, whilst it has been the leader in this for a long time because it was kind of the first mover, the first company to produce an email newsletter piece of software, it's also the one that sort of gets the worst open rates. It's also the one that it's probably more confusing to use than any of the others. I've used probably about 5 to probably 6, maybe even 7 different email newsletter software. And every time I use them, MailChimp is the one that I go back to and go, oh, it's just so difficult to use. And it's just so not intuitive because it's been sort of built upon and more things have been bolted onto it over time that it's become, yes, while everyone uses it, it's not the easiest one to use. There are other alternatives like MailerLite. I use HubSpot. Some people like to use Constant Contact and Active Campaign. Sendinblue is also another tool that's really good for sending these things out. And just about all those tools have far better open rates than what MailChimp does. Especially when you're not using the free versions of them, you're paying for it, you tend to get better open rates because you get a higher level of service. You get the ability to be able to tie into better servers that they're going to send it from, and the moving of IP addresses a lot more, rotating them so that the spam filters are not picking up on that repetition of everything coming from the one place or the one IP address. Another thing we seem to do is we send the same thing to everybody. At the moment, my own email newsletter is designed in such a way that it sends the same thing to the same people every week. As I grow that following, and as I know more about them and how they read my newsletters and what they read, I'm starting to learn that I can segment my audiences up into different areas. There's people who are in it specifically for news. There's people who are in it apparently for the storytelling, and then there's others who are just wanting to look at what events I'm running in the next week and be able to book in for a webinar or a workshop like that. So being able to segment that up is something we don't tend to do. Even if we've got only about 300 people on our list, maybe, if you've got a small amount of people like that, and yeah, that's a pretty small amount, then segmenting it up probably doesn't feel quite so important. But when you start to get up to my level, like of 7,500, above that, 3,000 people level, that's when you might really consider segmenting your database up into different lists. They're all sending a different thing for different reasons. So my example is I could have a list of people who I'm sending out stuff because they want to read the stories I'm writing. The second lot could be people who are just in it to find out what workshops I've got on. And the third lot are people who are looking for a little bit of online education, hints, tips, and training, so I can actually deliver that to them. Split those things up. I have 3 smaller email groups, but they'll all receive something that's much more appropriate for what they seem to be enjoying as part of my email newsletters. Another thing we do that's interesting, that's gone down the bottom, but there's no call to action or next step. So what we're saying is that we're putting all this stuff in, but not giving anyone anywhere to go next. It's like saying, here, buy my stuff, but you don't tell anyone where to buy that stuff. That's what we're doing in a lot of these newsletters, where we're filling it full of amazing stuff. We're not giving anyone an option to go deeper with us, to learn more with us, to my throat, to be able to go deeper with us, to perhaps book some time with us or buy something from us. Another thing, we don't watch our analytics, and all those questions about segmentation and about splitting up your users into different lists for different purposes all comes from those analytics. My analytics tell me who's clicking what's being clicked the most, what's not being clicked the most, how many things have opened, who has opened, who are the people who have dropped off as disengaged. I can form a list of disengaged people by producing a very, very bright, very, very pointed email to them to say, okay, you might be disengaged, but you haven't unsubscribed from me yet. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a special email together just for you that's very highly personalized to get you back engaged with me again. And once you are, I'll put you back in my main list and you'll get my main email again. Now, none of those things I would know without those analytics. So once I've got the analytics in place, I know what's happening. Just like on your website, you can't know what people love the most on your website until you know how to read your analytics to be able to tell you where people are going, what they're doing, and what they tend to be dwelling mostly on rather than something else. Oh, boring subject lines. This is one thing that comes up quite a lot in email newsletters, even some of the better ones that I read. Terrible subject lines. They don't make sense. It's something like, the CMS newsletter number 132 dated, and it's got the date on it. It's got nothing in there that make me go, oh yeah, I want to know what that is. There's nothing there saying two great new tools you'll wish you had learned earlier. That's something which I would want to open up. Something with a headline such as 3 things that you'll do that will make you work faster without working harder. And I'll go, yep, I'm interested in. But something comes up and says our weekly newsletter edition number 357 means nothing unless I'm highly, highly engaged already with that newsletter and I know what to expect from that newsletter each week. It's not giving me a clue as to what is going on. So including that subject line, not naming it as your newsletter, it's coming from, excuse me, it's getting really hot in here. It's coming from your email address or the right email address that your sending program sends from. So you're not going to get that problem where you have a lack of recognition of whose email this is. What you want to do is take it past recognition and into I must act. I'll see that headline and go, I simply must open that because that's a very compelling headline. We also can tend to include way too many images. Why is that bad? Well, lots of images take time to open, particularly on these mobile phones. When you open a mobile phone, the browser is not as well powered as what it is on a PC or a Mac. So therefore, it's not going to open things quite as easily. The other thing is too, that a lot of email clients like Outlook particularly tends to cut the images out and says, hey, we haven't loaded the images because they may give away your location or something equally as inane as that. And it'll say, if you want to open the images, click here. And then it'll open all the images up for you. Now, if I receive something which doesn't have the images showing, it's usually because it's something I don't trust, haven't had any engagement with, and haven't added their email address to my whitelist or to my contacts. So it's something which I'm probably not going to trust all that much, right? So when you see that, to get around that, you just don't have so many images. One image not loading is far better than 15 images not loading. So reduce the amount of images to something that's really manageable rather than having an image after every single paragraph. It's just not necessary. We also tend to send at the wrong time. I send mine on Saturday mornings because that to me is a time when I think that people who I want to get through to with the information I've got have the time with which to read it. My emails also mean it's meant to be read before you get on with your day on a Saturday morning. I send it very early in the morning, 7 a.m. So that by the time you get up and get about, it's one of the first things you may do. Now, does that work for me? Yes and no. I find that I'll send a thing on Saturday and I might have 16% open rate on the Saturday, but by Monday, I'll have 25% open rate. And usually by, say, Wednesday, I've got it up to about 46 to 48% open rate. What that's telling me is that most people are opening my email on Monday morning, not on Saturday morning. There's a certain amount that open it on a Sunday morning as well. Probably about a third of all the people who read my email open it up on Saturday and Sunday. So am I sending it at the wrong time? Well, I might just be, and it may actually be something I need to adjust in my sending. Still getting an insanely good open rate, but they're not necessarily all opening them up on the day that I want to open them up. We also don't tend to personalize our emails. This is where we just don't add a name in there. Hey, Bridget, this week you're going to learn all about this. And that sort of friendly opening, it does a little psychological thing to us. Well, probably more neurochemistry, really. When we see our own name mentioned in something by someone else, when we hear our name called, a little shot of dopamine gets fired off in our head. And it's a bit of a pleasure chemical. It lets us know, oh, that felt good to feel that. And so what we do over and over when we hear our voice, or hear our names being called, we read our name being put somewhere, when something is personalized to us, that dopamine hit happens again, which is why social media is so good at this. As opposed to email marketing, the social media knows that if you personalize something to that point by delivering something that someone's really interested in and targeted that information right through to them, then we're very likely to get them to open it. With email, that's even more so. The more personalized it is in the subject line, personalized in the very first line of the email, even mentioning it in the closing paragraph and saying, well, that's it for now, Janine. Thanks for reading through. We hope you really enjoyed it, and we'll see you again next week. That kind of stuff really helps someone to associate positive feelings, positive behaviors with reading your email, which is the reason why you see so much of that, particularly in big corporate emails. So now we've got an idea of what email is all about and the email marketing is all about. What types of email are working best in 2022? And there's 3 lots of them, and we're going to go through each one. The first one is what I call the list. This is what I'm seeing more and more and more every single week. I am actually subscribed to probably about 10 different list emails, and they're emails that come out with a specific list of content in them. In this case, the example is the Moz Top 10. This is one of my favorite SEO ones. It's one that comes through as the top 10 stories around search engine optimization. Now, this one's back from 2015, so you've got an idea of how long these guys have been sending this. It's been going on for ages. And what the expectation is that I'm getting there is I'm getting 10 curated articles that are worth reading. Now, will I read all of them? No, I'll go through that list, find the one that interests me, and pick that one out and open it. These list emails are becoming much more popular early in the morning, and we're starting to see some monetized emails. Emails have been sponsored, emails that are sponsored by corporates, emails that have actually had ads on them, pointing people to go, hey, this is the one email you want to get every morning, to the point where there's like the Morning Brew is an email that makes millions of dollars every single year. It has millions of people subscribing to it. I used to subscribe to it. It's free. And it's just full of American stuff, American news, American sport. It's just got nothing in it for an Australian to care about. So I just got back off it again because it was utterly irrelevant for me, and they don't have an Australian version of it. But something like this is a good way of you going, okay, here's the top headlines in this area of interest I've got. I can then click on one of them to go further, but it's limited just to 10. So it's like one scroll and you've got the whole 10 mentioned there. Notice there's no images apart from the top image, which has changed over the years as well. So that change means that we've gone, well, we're not so much going to be in a place where we want to have lots of images on each one of those top 10. They've kept it very, very simple, very, very easy to read. So what's in it is a given number of items, usually a top 10, top 5. Here's the top 3 for the morning. Here's 20 things you can't get on with today without knowing. It's a mix of your content, and it can be some other people's content as well. Moz has probably about 30% of their content is 30% of the issue, the links, on their email is their own content, pointing to their own products and their own services. The rest is pointing to other people who've done research and who they regard as very good sources of information for search engine optimization and search engine marketing information. It's also a very specific topic area. So you would have to look at what your topic area is this. If you're a coach, you're a coach. If you're an NDIS provider, there'd be something to do with that. If you're someone who's producing training for accountants and lawyers and doctors or whatever it is, then it has to be something that really impacts them and is good for them. My stuff goes to small businesses and to other people in marketing, and other businesses are in consulting and that. So I've got to make sure that my topics are very, very tight. In fact, I only have one topic in every email. We'll see that one shortly. Why this works, this list format, is because it's a simple layout with no fluff. It gets straight to the point. Remember, we saw that then. I'll go back a couple of screens, you'll be able to see it, but it's something that you go, there's no fluff, no introduction. It doesn't sort of do like hi, it's Monday morning, time for another Moz Top 10. Did you know that this, and this? Let's get on with it. They don't do any of that. They just go Moz Top 10, bang, straight into it. No fluff, no mess, no fuss. And that's one of the reasons it really works. You get straight into the good stuff. And any plugs for your own stuff can form part of that list. So for instance, we look back at announcing the Web Developers SEO Cheat Sheet 3.0, that is one of the things that might be one of their own things. That's one of their own pieces of information from their own website. Or it could be, why good unique content needs to die, Whiteboard Friday. Rand Fishkin is their founder, and he was actually one of the writers of that. So they've got a couple of things in there that are all about that. The number one thing, the quality update, came from Barry Schwartz, which is also one of their writers at the time. So some of it is their content, some of it is just linking through to stuff that we think might be of interest, like we used to do with email, when we just forward emails that we thought might be interesting to people to each other. Still got a friend who does that through Facebook Messenger, sends me every day things that he loves that he thinks I might be interested in. It's part of what he does. And for the most part, I'm interested in the same kind of stuff. So you can include plugs for your own products and services in there as well. So how you make your own, basically you've got to choose a topic area. So if your topic area is, let's say it is community arts, then you choose the list length. So remembering that the longer the list, the more items in there, the smaller the summary is going to be. You notice in the top 10 from Moz that the summary was very, very super short. That's because you don't have a lot of room before people get bored of scrolling through and don't want to go any further. What we've seen with heat maps of how people read things is that people generally will see the first 3 things. And as they go down the page, less and less and less and less people will see that. So be very careful with the list length and make sure your killer stuff's right at the top, because your chances are no one's going to get down the bottom. And have one of those things be something that links through to some sort of thing that you do or have something to do with. Then you write a summary. In the case of Moz, it was a very, very short one. If you only have 3 items, you've got room for more summary in there. More summary can be good because it lets you show your writing talents to show, I guess, how to make that particular article more attractive and compelling for someone to click on the link to it. And then feel free to link elsewhere. So everything is going to be in there. Like, you're not going to put all the information in that single email. You're only just doing a summary and you're linking elsewhere. Now, that elsewhere is usually going to be your website, or it could be your blog, or it could be your Facebook account even. You can even link to it. I saw one today. It went out from someone. They linked through to an Instagram article. And I'm like, article on Instagram, really strange place to put it, but that was the channel they're trying to grow at the moment, is that Instagram channel. So they linked through to that. Some considerations to bear in mind when you're using the list method is to remember to include something of your own. It can get very easy to just select other people's stuff and go, hey, this is interesting stuff, and link it all off to all over the place. Always make sure the first thing is linked through your own source. So it's on your website or on one of your other social media platforms, and you're linking through to it. There's something that you did provide, that you put together. Keep your list length manageable, absolutely, because once you get too long, it becomes a little bit out of control. And whilst the top 21 reasons why you should be doing email marketing might sound sexy, the reality is probably only the top 3 to 4 are going to be read anyway. And this is a kind of email format that really works best for services and thought leaders. So people who are providing a service rather than providing a product, because it's looking for you to sort of explore and curate. It's where people value your opinion on things. So if someone values your opinion on occupational therapy, then you linking off to lots of places, including to your own stuff, validates with them that you're a good source of information of occupational therapy. So in my case, since I'm an expert of sorts at the world of digital communications and social media, therefore I could probably develop a list of curated content from all the stuff I read all around the internet every single day. I could probably send out a similar thing, which wraps up all the things that you should be reading about social media and digital marketing usage as a small business owner. So yeah, bear in mind, you probably need to be a service business to really pull this off. I'd use some examples using our own businesses. We're just a very small room today, so I won't be able to bring you up right now. But let's just say someone who I know is running training for executives. So what you might be able to do is form a list, which is, say, the top 5 executive information sources this week. And they could be, the first one is to a blog on your own website. The second one could be to a blog at Inc. magazine. Another one could be to the Sydney Morning Herald, because they've got a particular article which you think is very valuable for people to read. And your fourth one could perhaps be a link through to a workshop or a webinar that you've got online, or a YouTube video that you produce that is still within that area of interest. The second type of email we're going to look at is what we call the image-led email. I've given these all my own names because none of these types tend to have a name associated with them. They're just the ones that we've really noticed in my world are really performing well. Now, the image-led example would be this one for apartment therapy. They're daily, and it's basically just a few options that are led by gorgeous photography that are about, how to get a expensive living room look on the cheap, how to make mismatched decor feel cohesive, all that kind of stuff, which is giving you tips on how to basically build a better apartment interior design choice. Absolutely gorgeous photos, really beautiful examples of how they do it. And this is a good example of the image led because the whole point is about these images. We know enough about our client and enough about our reader that they just want to see gorgeous photos of cute apartments that have been immaculately designed and presented. And this newsletter delivers that in spades. And it just delivers like, here you go, here's a main thing. And now here's 3 minor things we're going to produce to you. So the main item is today's big article, which you can go and read more of. Now notice again, very short, very small summaries that then go off into a bigger article on the website. So what it contains is a strong focus on images, as you can tell. It has a big headline, but a very short summary. And that's overall a small amount of content. You can't go on too far with those. If you were to have 10 of those articles linked, only the first 3 would get a look in. In this case, it may only be the first 1 that gets a look in because you get underneath the fold before you, which is you have to scroll up to see number 2, 3, and 4. So in realistic terms, only that 1 article at the very top may be the only thing that gets seen and clicked on in so many cases with that particular email. Because there is a small amount of content, they've made a very strong choice about that, saying, well, basically, this is our daily article. Of course, this is the one thing we want you to read. Why this works is because this particular type of email really knows its audience well. It knows exactly the kind of person it's trying to reach, what they like, what they love, what they don't like, and they often don't have time. They're reading this in their break. They just want to be attracted to beautiful photos. And perhaps while they're waiting for their coffee to be made, they're also wanting to read a few tips on how to get an apartment that looks like that. Another thing is too, those photos really break up the text. Those huge headlines and those tiny little summaries and the big photos, breaking it up. So you're not faced with that too long didn't read thing where there's so much text on there. You just can't seem to get yourself to read it all. It's just like this muddle of letters and numbers that seem to be firing at you, but you can't make sense of because there's so much of it. You'll also find that the images need to be relevant to the text. So if you're looking at making an expensive looking apartment, but doing it on the cheap, what you want to do is show an expensive looking apartment, right? Or another one, which is the story about how to make mismatched decor look cohesive. And you're going to have something which has mismatched decor, but looks amazingly cohesive for some reason. We don't know why, we don't know what they did to make that happen, but it's all mismatched stuff that looks awesome together. So it works because it's very clear on those 3 points, knows its audience and what they want. It breaks up the text because it knows they really just want to see the photos. And the photos that are there are relevant to the text that's there. If I click on that article, like I do with so many clickbait, outbrain, taboola kind of articles at the end of news.com.au, I click on something and it says, here, you're going to find out what this person from the Brady Bunch looks like now. And I go and click on that, and it's going to take me 30 clicks to get to what that person looks like. I'm going to get really annoyed by about 2 clicks in and realize I've been clickbaited. So don't clickbait people with something they're not going to see. If I'm going to see that photo mentioned in how to make an expensive look out of cheap apartment bits and pieces, I want to see that particular example you showed me being done, because that's what attracted me in there in the first place. So how you make your own? Again, choose your topic area. Then select what your main story is. You're going to have one main story on your website that may be a blog article, and then select no more than 3 other stories, because you don't want to have people having to scroll on forever to get your stuff. And then choose the most relevant photos you can find for that particular topic. So they've got to be photos that if you're mentioning that, that we're going to show you how to build a look like this, you actually do go in and build a look like that. Or if it's a story about how we helped someone who was recently in a disability situation to be able to achieve much more with their life, you either have the photo of the person with their blessing, of course, or you've got something really, really similar that really paints that picture for people. Because if we go to read that story and it's a picture of someone else or there's a photo of something irrelevant, it's really going to disappoint us. It creates what is called a cognitive dissonance. It's a mismatch between what I expected and what I got. Or it's between what usually cognitive dissonance is something you experience, for instance, if you are pretending to be someone you're not. If you're pretending to be a wildly popular person and you are not, then you create a cognitive dissonance. And it's how we trip ourselves up and get caught up in our lies, is because of that dissonance. The consideration on the image-led style is to go easy on the photos. Notice they only had 4. They had a logo at the top, and then they only had 4 photos, the one for the main article and 3 others. That was it, 4 photos, not 18, not 27 photos, not trying to build a website in there. They're just going easy on those photos. So we don't want to go too hard on those photos and have a photo after every single sentence. They also led with their brand. Because the eye tends to get led directly to those gorgeous photos, for them to be noticed as the brand they are, they really had to lead with that at the very top of the article. Now, I don't put a one on mine. I don't put a photo of me on mine, and it's working pretty well, but it's a very different style of email. It works, but it also won't work in this case, because what we've got is your logo and your brand competing with all those beautiful photos. So if you lead with the brand, then you've got the opportunity then to have someone at least see that brand. And the theory of mere exposure, so the mere exposure effect, says the more that someone sees your brand, the more that someone sees your logo, the more they associate it with trust, the more they associate it with quality and being premium. So we want to make sure they see our profile and our, either our photo or a logo as often as possible. The other thing I want you to consider too is that this particular style of format of email is very, very common right now. It's possibly the most common kind of email that's going out there right now, because we know how powerful it is for those photos. So you're coming up against a lot of others who look exactly like yours. You're going to have a very similar looking email to everybody else who does what it is you do. So bear that in mind, that you may need to use a few other little tricks, like have a certain style guide for your photos, and perhaps include some sort of brand stamp on each photo, something that's going to make it very sure that they're reading something from you and not sort of being mixed up with all the other things that they're reading at the moment. Again, we won't look at some examples here, but I suppose we could look at someone who's maybe doing who's got a cafe and they want to show their special of the week, and they want to introduce maybe a new staff member, and they want to introduce a new loyalty program. So you may include the top line, the headline, the main thing is going to be all about the new items on special this week, the new meals. The second bit could be welcome our new barista Gemma. She's got all these things about her, and say hi to her next time you're in. And the third one would then be your third, whatever it happens to be. So you'd be something that's always relatable back to something that gives value to our to your audience. So something they're going to care about, something they're going to actually want to follow, something they're going to want to read, rather than you just going, hey, here's what's happening. You're saying, hey, here's what it means to you. This is why you should care. Big sip of water for this one. This one is the singular focus. And the singular focus email is the one I do for my Saturday sprint. That's my particular newsletter. And the singular focus is something like this. Now, this looks very familiar for those of you who may already get my email. This particular email is exactly the format that I copied. And I told Justin that I did it. He's a bit of a hero of mine. 22,547 motivated followers on his email list. He has 270 something thousand people who follow him on LinkedIn. He's a bit of a machine. But this is an example of the singular focus, opening up with an intro and then going straight into it, straight into the content. Now, why he doesn't go straight into the content is because there's a little bit of a psychology going on the top there. And we'll talk about that right now. What's in this email type is one single item or one single story. We're not jumping around to 3 different items, 3 different clicks to go around to finish up reading the story. One story told in its entirety. It's almost all text. So this breaks all the rules you may have thought that were there. This one is like a particularly interesting one because it is all text. And Thula is telling me that she actually receives this one. That's actually really cool. That you get Justin's one. It's a really good one. Like, it's so instructive and it's taught me so much. He's a bit of a hero of mine. There's a lot of psychology employed in this, and I want to take you back to the top of this email. The first bit of psychology that's there is that mere exposure effect. Repeating his name. Hi, Justin here. Or hey, Justin here. He puts a little waving emoji in it. So it's friendly. Hey, Justin here, being friendly. Then he says, happy Saturday morning to 22,547 motivated solopreneurs. The psychology behind that is that you're part of something bigger and you're on the right track because 22,000 and a half other people are following this particular newsletter. So it must be pretty good if that many people have subscribed to it. I've got about 7,500. I've got a long way to go to get to his level. But I'll tell you now that he is a machine. He's someone who I definitely want to get as big as in terms of my following on my newsletter, maybe one day. The second thing he says is, here's one short tip on how to grow your audience online business. It's all, and you say, okay, this is what this is going to be about. My email is all about today growing my audience and online business. Great. So I know what I'm going to get. An expectation's being set. Now, that's 3 pieces of psychology that have been put into that first opening set of paragraphs. The third one is, today's issue takes about 4 minutes to read. I've now been told how much of my very valuable time is going to be used to read this email. I look at that and go, 4 minutes to read? Yeah, I can spare 4 minutes and I read it. That to me, from everybody who has given me feedback on my particular email, has been the number one thing that people have mentioned. They've said, oh God, it's so good. You tell me how much it's going to take. You say it's going to be 2.5 minutes. I know it's going to be 2.5 minutes and I can afford that time, or I can tell whether I need to read it later. I'm like, well, that's the point. It gives people the choice to read it now or later and tells them roughly how much time it's going to take them to read. 4 really important pieces of psychology. The friendly welcome, which makes you feel welcome and gives you the dopamine hit of seeing your name mentioned, or seeing a name that you recognize mentioned. The second bit is telling you you're part of something bigger and that you're on the right track. The third bit is, here's what you're going to get. And that fourth bit, that really important bit, is saying how long it's going to take you to read this. That's what I like getting more than anything. You pick up a physical book, you can look at it and it's maybe that thick and you go, that's going to take me about 9 hours. So that's going to take me a bit of time. I might need to do it in little bits and pieces. But if I look at that and go, 4 minutes to read, that's fine. I can do that. And then he goes straight into it. In today's issue, I'm going to tell you how I would go about finding the 1,000 true fans if I was starting from scratch. Bang, straight away, in we go. Straight to the good stuff. Not wasting time with other little bits and pieces, not sharing news about his company, not sharing about who the new staff member is he's working with. He just goes straight into the value. And that's why it works so well for him. So what works in this is that whole thing, if you're part of something big, is that whole thing, you know how long it will take to read. And one thing you probably didn't notice if we go back there, how short these paragraphs are. 2 lines, 2 lines and a bit, 2 lines, 2 lines. Really short paragraphs that are split out. In fact, he splits up his sentences into paragraphs to make it so much easier for you to read. And some of the story I've read behind why he did that is because he is actually dyslexic. So he has trouble reading lots of text squished together. So he likes to break those things up. That's a really good way of actually helping the eyes to receive the message so much more clearly. So that's a really, there's so much psychology has been employed in that, beyond just what looks pretty and what's going to drag someone in, is that whole process is looking at data. Justin and myself, we look at all the data. We look at what works in our emails and we make adjustments. He has recently changed from opening his email in your email system to look like this, to being a photo and a summary, and then you click off to read it, because he's trying to drive a bit more traffic to his website. So that's one thing he's done differently. I'm not following him down that track just yet. He's about 3 months ahead of me with these emails. So I'm sort of watching what he's doing and watching what his method is, and then also watching my own followers to see what they're doing, to see what seems to work and what doesn't work. So if we know that all these things work, how do we make our own? Well, we choose a topic that we know a lot about. It's some interesting choices of English I've used on point one there, but choose a topic that you do know a lot about, okay? It needs to be something because it's going a little bit deeper in than just a simple summary. You're going to write the actual article. It's like writing a blog, but in an email, but really, really short so that people can get all the points they need to and then get on with their day. Secondly, you need to set expectations in that introduction. Hi, Justin here. Welcome to 22,472 entrepreneurs. Today's email is going to be about, and it's going to be this long to read. So you set those expectations. It's about this. It'll take about 2.5 minutes to read or 4 minutes to read. The expectations set so that you know what you're getting. Third, write those short sentences and short paragraphs. I like to say that a sentence should be no longer than 20 words and that a paragraph should be no more than 3 sentences. That keeps things really nice and tight. He goes further and makes each paragraph 1 sentence. So it becomes a very simple bits of information you read 1 bit at a time. And then include no more than 3 links to actions throughout that email. I had 4 in my last one, and it led to a lot more clicks on the first one, which was actually in the body of the email. What I usually do is at the end, I might even have to share an example of my one. Thul has already seen my one, I think. What I do is basically have a line at the bottom and then it says, when you're ready and you want to go further, here's 3 ways I can help. And I list them. Number 1 is usually, here, go and watch a video of me, a video I presented of a workshop on YouTube to learn how to do something. Second one's usually book this webinar or free workshop with me, and it points off to Eventbrite where you can do that. And the third one then is usually book a free 15-minute discovery call with me to see what we can discuss about your digital needs. So I've always got those 3 little things on there, and they do perform really well, but usually the one that performs the best is the workshop. The one that goes off to book a place in a workshop usually outperforms everything. But this time, the link through to Justin's newsletter as an example of the newsletter that I love has been the one that's outperformed it. So I think I might be responsible for giving a few more subscribers this week. So he's was it 22,437, might grow by a couple of hundred more, hopefully. So that's how you make them. Some of the issues that come up with these though is do try and keep it under 4 minutes. I think once you get above that 4-minute mark to 4.5 and 5 minutes, you start to have problems because 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes feels small. 5 minutes is an interruption to your day. The second thing is really know your topic area, because you're going to find it's really hard to write these if you don't know that topic area very, very well. And something I did not expect to happen, and I'm sure Justin gets this as well, is to be prepared for replies. People actually reply to these emails. Now, I find that the image-led emails, the list style emails, people don't reply to them. They tend to just consume them and move on. But my email generates between 20 and 30 replies every single weekend. That's fantastic. Even if that reply is just someone saying thank you, it's an opportunity for me to deepen my relationship with them by saying, hey, you're most welcome. Here's a bit of a preview of what I'm looking at doing next week. So I'll give them a little gift of here's what I'm going to do next week's one. Or, hey, I noticed that you're really into this one. Here's a workshop I've got coming up that I didn't list on the email that you might want to look at. So those little replies give you an option to go that little bit deeper. And some of the time those replies are, hey, I had trouble booking for the workshop or something like that. So I have to send them a new link. Or they might go, hey, I've just tried to book you, but you're not available for another 3 weeks. Is there a possibility of an earlier session? And I'll go looking to see if there's a gap in my calendar that I can point them to for that booking. So all of that really deepens your relationship with people because you are responsive to them. Because it was a very welcoming email and it's written almost like it's a personal email just written for them, then they feel like they should respond to it. And I've made it so it's not one of those no reply email addresses. I want them to reply. If someone wants to reply to me, they can, and they'll get an answer from me that weekend as well. So they're the considerations of that. An example using your own business, probably my own one. What I'm doing in all of this is I add everyone to my list and then curate it. So everyone who comes in through my email platform is tied into HubSpot. And so they automatically go into my marketing list. Doesn't matter who they are, where they are. It could be the Chief Minister of the Northern Territory or the Prime Minister of Australia. I don't care. They're on my list until they say they don't want to be. Is this legal? Absolutely, because they've emailed me or I've emailed them. So therefore they we've got a previous relationship that I can actually market to them. I use the singular focus type because I always want one clear message to be expressed through that email each week. And I send it every single Saturday morning at about 7 a.m. And then once I do, over the weekend, and then Monday and then Wednesday, I check my analytics and make changes. So for instance, I can go into my HubSpot right now, log into it and see how my email on Saturday was doing. As of this morning, I think it was around about 35% open rate it had. So let's go in and have a look. Opening, get into my account because I've got about 4 different HubSpot accounts. Into the marketing section. Come on. Here we go. Let's go. Marketing, email, and I'll tell you now that it's currently up to 36.57%. So that's below at the moment, but it's Tuesday. By Wednesday, it usually comes up. Now, I expect this particular email is probably going to be a lower open rate than most as my email's starting to mature again. And I've got to go through and start removing some of the unengaged or disengaged people. So it drives that back up again and find out what it is that over the last 2 weeks has dropped my rate down, particularly 4 weeks ago, I had the lowest open rate. This one's looking like it may be, again, one of the lower ones. So I'll go, okay, what is it about those that hasn't worked and make those changes? So my analytics and my changes really make a difference to me. If you want to follow along mine, and you'll actually see the changes as they happen, you can find it at my website, dantesandjames.com. And you can just go straight in it from there. It'll log you straight. It'll put you straight in, and you'll also pick up all my blogs and free guides and all the things I do there. So feel free to have a look through that to see what you may find some. It'd just be worth it to see how I change things like the title. Like for instance, by putting in TSS instead of the Saturday sprint, I actually got a higher open rate in the last 2 weeks than what I did the week before that. But I went back to the Saturday sprint this week and my open rate's gone down. So I'm wondering whether that might have something to do with it. So I'll replicate the things that have worked for me, get rid of the things that haven't, and get a better open rate as things go on, and hopefully keep those 7,500 people really, really happy with what I'm doing.